Aboard the luxurious Sapphire Queen, anchored off the sun-drenched coast of Capri, a glittering gathering hides a deadly secret. Lady Beatrice Ashford, a ruthless collector of jewels and secrets, is found dead, a jeweled dagger in her back, the priceless star of Capri gleaming beside her. Who among the elegant guests, Clara, the glamorous actress, Grayson, the brash tycoon, or the quiet secretary, Penelope, holds the key to her murder? Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant detective whose little grey cells will unravel a web of blackmail, betrayal, and vengeance. Can he unmask the killer before they strike again? Or will the Sapphire Queen become a floating tomb? Chapter 1. The gathering storm sun dipped low over the azure waters of the Mediterranean, casting a golden sheen across the deck of the Sapphire Queen, a luxurious private yacht anchored off the coast of Capri. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of salt and jasmine, mingling with the clink of crystal glasses and the soft murmur of polite conversation. The yacht, owned by the wealthy and enigmatic Lady Beatrice Ashford, was a floating palace of polished teak and gleaming brass, its opulence matched only by the tension simmering beneath the surface of its carefully curated guest list. It was August 17th, 1925. And the stage was set for a tragedy that would soon demand the attention of the great Hercule Poirot. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion to the Belgian detective, stood at the railing, his gaze drifting from the shimmering horizon to the eclectic assembly of guests. Lady Ashford, a formidable widow in her late 50s, presided over the gathering with the air of a queen, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Her emerald silk gown caught the light, and a diamond necklace sparkled with a cold, unyielding brilliance. She was known for her ruthless business acumen and her penchant for collecting secrets, as others might collect rare coins. Tonight, she was hosting a select group aboard her yacht, ostensibly to celebrate her recent acquisition of a priceless sapphire, the Star of Capri. Yet Hastings sensed an undercurrent of unease, as though the sapphire were not the only thing of value at stake. The guests were a study in contrasts, each a vibrant thread in the tapestry of suspicion that Poirot would later unravel. There was Dr. Felix Mortimer, a Harley Street physician with a nervous tic and a penchant for expensive cigars, whose medical expertise had saved Lady Ashford's life during a bout of pneumonia 2 years prior. Beside him, sipping champagne with studied nonchalance, stood Miss Clara Duval, a French actress whose beauty was as captivating as her reputation was scandalous. Her laughter rang out like a bell, but her eyes darted toward Lady Ashford with a flicker of resentment. Then there was Mr. Leonard Grayson, a brash American industrialist whose fortune rivaled Lady Ashford's own. His booming voice and hearty laugh dominated the deck, yet his hands fidgeted with his cufflinks, betraying a certain unease. His young wife, Mrs. Evelyn Grayson, clung to his arm, her delicate features marred by a faint frown. She was 20 years his junior, and whispers of her dissatisfaction had already reached Hastings' ears through the gossip of the ship's crew. Rounding out the party were, to quieter figures, Miss Penelope Travers, Lady Ashford's mousy secretary, whose spectacles and dowdy attire did little to conceal her sharp intelligence, and Mr. Victor Langston, a solicitor with a pinched face and a habit of scribbling notes in a leather-bound journal. Langston's presence was puzzling, for he seemed out of place among the glittering elite, yet his watchful gaze suggested he was no mere bystander. Hastings adjusted his tie. Feeling the weight of the occasion, he had joined Poirot on this voyage, at the detective's insistence, though Poirot himself had yet to appear. A holiday, mon ami, Poirot had said with a twinkle in his eye, but one must always be prepared for the unexpected. Hastings had learned long ago that Poirot's holidays were rarely without incident, and the atmosphere aboard the Sapphire Queen confirmed his suspicions. The guests were too polite, their smiles too practiced, their glances too guarded. Something was amiss, and Hastings felt it as surely as he felt the gentle sway of the yacht beneath his feet. Dinner was served at precisely 7:30 p.m. As the ship's bell tolled and the guests gathered in the opulent dining saloon, the table was a vision of elegance, crisp white linens, silver cutlery, and a centerpiece of orchids flown in from the mainland. Lady Ashford sat at the head, her presence commanding silence as she raised her glass. "To the Star of Capri," she declared, her voice resonant with authority and to secrets well kept. The toast was met with murmurs of agreement, but Hastings noted the fleeting glances exchanged among the guests. Dr. Mortimer's hand trembled slightly as he drank. Miss Duval's smile was a fraction too tight. Mr. Grayson's laugh was a touch too loud. The meal progressed with exquisite courses consomme, poached sole, roast pheasant, but the conversation remained stilted. Lady Ashford spoke of her sapphire, a gem rumoured to carry a curse, though she dismissed such notions with a wave of her hand. "Superstition is for fools," she said, her eyes locking briefly with Miss Duval's. "The Star of Capri is mine, and I intend to keep it." Hastings caught the actress's fleeting scowl before she masked it with a sip of wine. As the dessert plates were cleared, Lady Ashford rose, excusing herself to retrieve the sapphire from her private safe. "You shall all see it," she promised, "and marvel at its beauty." She departed with Miss Travers in tow, leaving the guests to murmur among themselves. Hastings leaned toward Dr. Mortimer, attempting small talk, but the doctor's distracted. Replies only heightened his unease. The minutes stretched on, and Lady Ashford did not return. At 8:45 p.m., a piercing scream shattered the calm, echoing from the direction of the owner's cabin. The guests froze, their faces at a blow of shock and fear. Hastings was the first to move, his military instincts propelling him toward the sound, with Mr. Grayson and Dr. Mortimer close behind. They navigated the narrow corridor to Lady Ashford's cabin, where Miss Travers stood trembling, her face ashen. She's dead," Miss Travers stammered, pointing to the cabins. Interior. Hastings pushed past her, his heart pounding. There, slumped over her desk, was Lady Beatrice Ashford, her emerald gown stained with the dark, spreading crimson. A jeweled dagger, its hilt encrusted with sapphires, protruded from her back. The safe stood open, its contents untouched, and the Star of Capri gleamed mockingly on the desk beside her. Dr. Mortimer knelt beside the body, his fingers probing for a pulse. "She's gone," he confirmed, his voice hollow. "Stabbed through the heart." Death would have been instantaneous. The guests crowded at the doorway, their gasps and murmurs filling the air. Miss Duval clutched her pearls, her eyes wide with horror, while Mr. Grayson's face reddened with indignation. "Who could have done this?" he demanded. "We were all at dinner." Hastings scanned the room, noting the open porthole, the undisturbed papers on the desk, and a faint scent of cigar smoke lingering in the air. His mind raced, but one thought rose above the rest. This was a case for Hercule Poirot daughters if summoned. By the thought, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Mon Dieu, what a calamity!" Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold, his immaculate suit and polished moustache a stark contrast to the scene of violence before him. His green eyes gleamed, with a quiet intensity, taking in every detail: the body, the dagger, the sapphire, the trembling guests. "Hastings, mon ami," he said softly, "it seems our holiday is at an end. A murder has been committed, and Hercule Poirot will not rest until the truth is revealed." The little Belgian detective stepped forward, his presence a beacon of order in the midst of chaos. The game was afoot, and the Sapphire Queen would yield its secrets to the man who trusted only his little grey cells. Chapter 2. The shadow of the Crimith air in Lady Beatrice Ashford's cabin was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the oppressive weight of shock. The Sapphire Queen rocked gently on the Mediterranean swell, but within the confines of the luxurious yacht, time seemed to have halted. The guests, gathered just outside the cabin door, stood in a stunned blow, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions: fear, disbelief, and, in some cases, a flicker of calculation. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating authority, surveyed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker examining a delicate mechanism. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at his friend's side, felt the familiar stir of anticipation. Poirot's little grey cells were already at work, and the hunt for truth had begun. It was 8:50 p.m. on August 17th, 1925, mere minutes after the discovery of Lady Ashford's body. The jeweled dagger, its sapphire-encrusted hilt glinting in the lamplight, remained embedded in her back, a grotesque centerpiece to the tragedy, the Star of Coppery. The priceless gem that had been the evening's ostensible focus lay untouched on the desk, its facets catching the light like a malevolent eye. The open safe, the undisturbed papers, and the faint whiff of cigar smoke noted by Hastings earlier lingered as silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot's first act was to restore order. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice calm yet commanding, "I must ask you all to return to the dining saloon. This is now a scene of crime, and it must not be disturbed. Hastings, mon ami, please ensure that no one enters this cabin until I have completed my initial observations." His green eyes flicked toward the group, noting their reactions. Miss Clara Duval's hands trembled as she clutched her shawl. Mr. Leonard Grayson's jaw tightened, his eyes darting toward his wife. Miss Penelope Travers, still pale, clutched her spectacles as if they were a lifeline. Hastings ushered the guests back to the saloon, where the remnants of dessert petits fours and crystal flutes of champagne sat incongruously. Amidst the growing tension, the ship's captain, a stout man named Hargrove, had been summoned and now stood wringing his hands, his authority diminished in the face of murder. "I've sent a wireless to the authorities in Coppery," he said nervously. "They'll be here by morning, but the sea's a bit rough tonight. No one's to leave the yacht." Poirot, meanwhile, began his meticulous examination of the cabin. He moved with the grace of a cat, his gloved hands hovering over objects, without touching them, his eyes scanning every detail. "Hastings," he called softly, "observe, if you please, the position of the body. Lady Ashford is slumped forward, yes? The dagger enters at an angle, suggesting the assailant stood behind her. But regard as the chair is turned slightly, as if she were about to rise or turn toward someone." Hastings nodded, his mind racing to keep up. She might have been speaking to her killer. He ventured, "Someone she knew, perhaps, precisement." Poirot murmured, "And note the porthole open, yet the night is cool. Why? And this cigar smoke faint, but unmistakable. Did Lady Ashford smoke? None, I think not. This is a clue. Hastings, a thread in the tapestry." He knelt beside the desk, examining the Star of Coppery. The gem remains. If robbery was the motive, why leave such a prize? No, this crime is personal, rooted in the heart. Poirot's attention turned to the safe, its door ajar, but its contents documents, a velvet pouch, a few pieces of jewelry untouched. He opened the pouch, revealing a small key, which he pocketed with a thoughtful hum. "This key," he said, "may unlock more than a lock, Hastings. It may unlock a motive." He then examined the dagger, noting its intricate design. A ceremonial piece, not a common weapon. "It belongs to this yacht, perhaps. We shall inquire." By 9:15 p.m., Poirot rejoined the guests in the saloon, where the atmosphere was taut with suspicion. Captain Hargrove had stationed a crewman at the cabin door, and the guests sat in uneasy silence, their earlier conviviality replaced by wariness. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his moustache impeccably neat despite the hour. "Ms. Amice," he began, "a terrible crime has been committed. Lady Beatrice Ashford is dead. Murdered by a hand among us. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth, but I require your cooperation. Let us establish the facts. Who last saw Lady Ashford alive, and when?" Miss Penelope Travers spoke first, her voice trembling but clear. "I accompanied her to her cabin at 8:30 p.m. She wanted to fetch the sapphire. I left her there, alive, and returned to the saloon. I was only gone a moment when I found her." Her eyes filled with tears, but Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "And you, Mademoiselle Duval?" he asked, turning to the actress. Dr. Clara Duval tossed her head, her voice laced with defiance. "I was here in the saloon with everyone else. I didn't leave after dinner. You can ask anyone." Her eyes flicked toward Dr. Mortimer, who nodded curtly. "Indeed," the doctor said, clearing his throat. "I was discussing a medical journal with Mr. Grayson. We were all together until that scream." Mr. Grayson pounded the table. "This is preposterous. We were all here except Miss Travers." And why was that porthole open? Could someone have come from outside? His wife, Evelyn, touched his arm, her expression unreadable. Poirot raised a hand. All possibilities will be considered, Monsieur Grayson. But let us be precise. The scream was heard at 8:45 p.m. Miss Travers, you say you left Lady Ashford at 8:30. That leaves a window of 15 minutes. Where was each of you during that time? Mr. Victor Langston, the solicitor, spoke up, his voice dry as parchment. I stepped onto the deck for a cigarette at around 8:35. I was alone, but I saw no one else. I returned just before the scream. His fingers toyed with his journal, and Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting, Poirot said. And you, Madam Grayson? Evelyn Grayson hesitated, her delicate hands twisting in her lap. I went to my cabin briefly to fetch my shawl. It was chilly. I was back by 8:40, I think. Her husband shot her a sharp glance, but she avoided his eyes. Poirot's expression remained impassive, but Hastings knew that the detective was cataloguing every word, every gesture. Very well. Poirot said, we shall verify these alibis. For now, I ask that you remain aboard and speak to no one of this matter. The truth, Miss Amos, is like a sapphire, it sparkles most brightly when held to the light. As the guests dispersed to their cabins under Captain Hargrave's watchful eye, Hastings followed Poirot back to the crime scene. What do you make of it, Poirot? He asked. The dagger, the sapphire, the open porthole, could it be an outsider? Poirot shook his head. None, Hastings. The porthole is a distraction, a red herring. The crime is intimate, committed by one who knew Lady Ashford's habits, her cabin, her sapphire. The cigar smoke, the key, the angle of the dagger, these are the threads we must weave. And we must learn why Lady Ashford invited this particular group. There is a pattern here, mon ami, and Hercule Poirot will find it. The night deepened, and the Sapphire Queen seemed to hold its breath, its secrets locked within the hearts of its passengers. Poirot's gaze lingered on the horizon, where the stars glittered like the sapphire on the desk. The game was only beginning, and the Belgian detective was already steps ahead. Chapter 3. The arrival of Poirot's method Sapphire Queen lay anchored under a star-strewn sky, its elegant silhouette a stark contrast to the grim reality within. The clock in the dining saloon struck 10 p.m. on August 17, 1925, and the air was heavy with the unspoken fears of the yacht's passengers. The murder of Lady Beatrice Ashford had cast a pall over the vessel, and the guests, now confined to their cabins under Captain Hargrave's orders, awaited the arrival of the Coppery authorities. Yet it was not the police who held the key to this mystery, but Hercule Poirot, whose arrival on the scene had shifted the atmosphere from chaos to a tense anticipation of truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing in the passageway outside Lady Ashford's cabin, watched as Poirot continued his meticulous inspection. The little Belgian detective moved with deliberate precision, his polished shoes silent on the polished teak floor, his green eyes darting from the blood-stained desk to the open porthole. The jeweled dagger, still embedded in Lady Ashford's back, gleamed with a cold menace, and the star of Capri rested on the desk, its presence a silent taunt. Poirot had forbidden anyone to touch the body or the room, preserving every detail for his analysis. Order and method, Hastings, he murmured, these are the tools that will unlock this crime. Poirot's presence on the Sapphire Queen was, to Hastings, a stroke of fortune, though he suspected Poirot would call it destiny. The detective had been invited by Lady Ashford herself, ostensibly for a holiday, though Hastings now wondered if she had sensed some danger. Poirot had been in his cabin, reviewing a letter from an old acquaintance, when the scream had drawn him to the scene. A holiday, mon ami, Poirot had said earlier, but one must always be prepared for the unexpected. Now, as he stood in the cabin, his moustache quivering slightly with concentration, Hastings saw the familiar spark of genius at work. Tell me, Hastings, Poirot said, pausing to examine a small ink blot on the desk, what do you observe about this room? Not the obvious, the dagger, the sapphire, but the subtle, the overlooked. Hastings frowned, his eyes sweeping the cabin. The desk was cluttered with papers, a fountain pen lying uncapped beside them, a glass of water, half drunk, stood near the Star of Copri. The porthole, open to the night air, admitted a faint breeze. The cigar smoke, Hastings said at last. It's still here, faintly, and the papers, they're neat, except for that ink blot. She wasn't writing when she was attacked, was she? Poirot's eyes gleamed with approval. Very good. Mon ami, the ink blot is fresh, yet the pen is dry. She was interrupted, perhaps, but not while writing. And the cigar smoke, it is a clue, but to what? We must discover who among our guests indulges in such a habit. He turned to the safe, its door still ajar, and retrieved a small leather-bound notebook. Flipping through it, he paused. At a page marked with a cryptic notation, CDO's 10,000. Refused. LG threatens. Poirot's lips pursed. This Hastings is a window into Lady Ashford's world. Secrets, debts. Threats, these are the threads of motive. Leaving the cabin, Poirot instructed Captain Hargrove to lock it and station a crewman outside. He then led Hastings to the saloon, where he intended to begin his interviews. The guests, summoned one by one, were to provide their accounts of the fatal 15 minutes between 8:30 and 8:45 p.m. Poirot settled into a high-backed chair, his hands folded neatly, his demeanor calm but unyielding. We begin with the facts, he told Hastings, but it is the psychology the hidden desires, the fears that will lead us to the truth. The first to be interviewed was Miss Penelope Travers, Lady Ashford's secretary. She entered the saloon, her plain brown dress and spectacles lending her an air of fragility. Though her eyes were sharp and alert, "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady despite her pale complexion, "I've told you what I know. I left Lady Ashford at 8:30, alive and well. I went to fetch her shawl from her wardrobe, as she complained of a chill. I was gone only a moment when I heard the scream." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And during that moment, Mademoiselle, did you see anyone in the corridor? Hear anything unusual?" Miss Travers hesitated, her fingers tightening on her spectacles. "No one, monsieur. The corridor was empty, but I thought I heard a door close, faintly, just before the scream. I can't be sure which one." Poirot nodded, jotting a note in his small black notebook. "And your relationship with Lady Ashford? She trusted you, non? You handled her private affairs?" Miss Travers flushed. "I was her secretary for 3 years. She was demanding, but fair. She trusted me with her correspondence, her accounts. I knew her better than most." Her voice wavered and she looked away. Status, Miss Penelope Travers, the dowdy but sharp-witted secretary to the late Lady Beatrice Ashford, stood trembling in the opulent saloon of the Sapphire Queen, her spectacles glinting under the chandelier's light. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, sat across from her, his moustache impeccable, his green eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. It was 10:15 p.m. on August 17th, 1925, and the air was thick with the aftermath of murder. Lady Ashford's body, still warm in her cabin, bore the jeweled dagger that had ended her life, and Poirot was determined to unravel the truth. Miss Travers' admission about the door closing was a small but significant detail, and Poirot filed it away, his mind already weaving connections. He dismissed her politely and called for Dr. Felix Mortimer next. The physician entered, his face drawn, a faint tremor in his hands. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, "I assure you, I was in the saloon discussing a medical case with Mr. Grayson. I smoke cigars, yes, but I was not near Lady Ashford's cabin." Poirot's eyebrow arched. "You smoke cigars, doctor, and when did you last indulge?" Mortimer hesitated. "Before dinner, on the deck, around 7 p.m., I believe." His tick and nervous twitch of his left eye intensified under Poirot's scrutiny. The interviews continued. Clara Duval, the French actress, swept in with theatrical poise, denying any absence from the saloon. "I was charming the guests, as always," she said, her smile brittle. Mr. Leonard Grayson blustered. insisting he and his wife were together, though Evelyn Grayson's earlier admission of fetching her shawl placed her briefly unaccounted. For Mr. Victor Langston, the solicitor, repeated his claim of smoking a cigarette on the deck, his journal clutched tightly, its pages a mystery Poirot intended to explore. By 11:30 p.m. Poirot had gathered a mosaic of alibis, each with gaps and inconsistencies. He returned to the cabin with Hastings, noting a faint scratch on the porthole's frame, a detail overlooked by others. This scratch, Hastings, he said, suggests someone may have climbed through. But why leave the sapphire? The crime is not theft but vengeance. We must learn who owed Lady Ashford what and who hated her enough to kill. As the night deepened, Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the clues, the cigar smoke, the notebook's cryptic entry, the scratch, the key. The Sapphire Queen held its secrets tightly. But Hercule Poirot was relentless, his little grey cells already illuminating the path to truth. Chapter 4. The questions deep in the Sapphire Queen lay cloaked in the stillness of the Mediterranean night, its polished decks reflecting the silver glow of the moon. It was just past midnight on August 18, 1925, and the yacht, once a beacon of luxury, now harboured a grim secret: the murder of Lady Beatrice Ashford. The air in the dining saloon, where Hercule Poirot conducted his interviews, was heavy with tension, the clink of champagne glasses replaced by the low hum of suspicion. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the saloon's grand windows, watching the dark waves lap against the hull, while Poirot, seated at the head of the table, prepared to probe deeper into the minds of the yacht's uneasy passengers. Poirot's method was as precise as a surgeon's scalpel, his questions designed to cut through the veneer of politeness and expose the raw motives beneath. His small black notebook lay open before him, its pages filled with cryptic notes, a timeline of the fatal 15 minutes, a sketch of the cabin's layout, a list of alibis riddled with gaps, the jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, the faint cigar smoke. The scratch on the porthole frame. These were the pieces of a puzzle only Poirot's little grey cells could assemble. Hastings, he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of certainty, the truth lies not in what is said, but in what is not said. We must listen for the silences. The interviews resumed with Miss Clara Duval, the French actress whose beauty was matched only by her flair for drama. She entered the saloon with a practised grace, her scarlet gown a vivid contrast to the muted elegance of the room. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her accent lilting, "I have told you. I was here, charming the guests. I had no reason to harm Lady Ashford. She was a friend." Her lips curved into a smile, but her eyes were guarded, darting toward the door as if expecting an interruption. Poirot leaned forward, his green eyes unblinking. "A friend, mademoiselle, yet I sense a certain froidure in your tone. Tell me, what was the nature of your relationship with Lady Ashford? She was a woman of wealth and influence, Did she perhaps hold some power over you?" Clara's smile faltered, her fingers tightening on her fan. "She was generous in her way. She sponsored my performances in London last season, but she could be demanding. She expected loyalty, gratitude." Her voice dropped and she glanced away. "I owed her nothing more than my talent." Poirot noted the hesitation, his pen scratching a brief note, "CDO's 10,000, and during the 15 minutes between 8:30 and 8:45, mademoiselle, you were here in the saloon. You saw no one leave?" "None," she said quickly. "Everyone was here, except Miss Travers, of course, and perhaps Mrs. Grayson for a moment." Her eyes flicked toward Hastings, as if seeking confirmation, but Poirot's gaze remained fixed on her. "Merci, mademoiselle. You may go, but we will speak again." As Clara departed, her steps a little too hurried, Poirot turned to Hastings. "She conceals something, mon ami. The debt in Lady Ashford's notebook, CDO's 10,000, it points to her, perhaps, but we must verify." Next came Mr. Leonard Grayson, the American industrialist, whose booming voice filled the saloon. Before he even sat down, "This is outrageous, Poirot," he blustered, his face flushed. "I'm a businessman, not a murderer. I was with Dr. Mortimer, talking shop, and till that scream, my wife can confirm it. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous habit Hastings had noted earlier. Poirot's expression was impassive. Monsieur Grayson, your business dealings with Lady Ashford, were they amicable? I understand she outbid you for the star of Capri at auction. A bitter pill. No, Grayson's jaw tightened. Business is business. She played hard and she won. I didn't like it, but I don't stab people over gems. Besides, I was nowhere near her cabin. His eyes darted toward the door, where his wife, Evelyn, waited to be called. And your wife, Poirot said smoothly, she left the saloon to fetch Hercule. Oui. At what time did she return? Grayson hesitated, his fingers pausing on his cufflinks. Around 8:40, I'd say. She was only gone a minute or two. Ask her yourself. Poirot dismissed Grayson and summoned Mrs. Evelyn Grayson, whose delicate beauty was marred by a nervous pallor. She sat, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. I went to my cabin for my shawl, she said softly. It was chilly on deck earlier. I was back before the scream, I'm sure of it. Precisement, Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. And did you see anyone in the corridor, madam? Or hear anything, a door closing? Perhaps Evelyn's. Fingers twisted in her lap. I don't recall. It was so quick. I just wanted my shawl. Her voice trembled, and Hastings caught a fleeting glance of fear in her eyes. Poirot's questions continued, each guest revealing fragments of their stories. Dr. Felix Mortimer reiterated his alibi, admitting to smoking a cigar on deck before dinner but denying any visit to Lady Ashford's cabin. Mr. Victor Langston, the solicitor, clutched his journal tightly, claiming he'd been alone on deck smoking a cigarette at 8:35 p.m. I saw no one, he said. His voice clipped, but I heard the sea and the wind. Nothing else. By 1:30 a.m., Poirot had completed the first round of interviews, his notebook filled with contradictions and half-truths. He led Hastings back to the crime scene, where the cabin remained untouched, the dagger still gleaming in Lady Ashford's back. Poirot examined the desk again, his fingers tracing the ink blot. This blot, he said, it is not random. Lady Ashford was writing, or about to write, when she was interrupted. And this key, he held up the small key from the safe. It may belong to something on this yacht. A locked drawer, a hidden compartment. We must find it. Hastings, struggling to keep up, ventured a theory. The porthole. Poirot, could someone have climbed through? The scratch suggests it. Poirot shook his head. A possibility, but unlikely. The porthole is small, and the scratch is fresh, yes. But it could be a deliberate misdirection. No. Hastings, the killer is among us on this yacht. The cigar smoke, the notebook, the dagger, these are personal. The motive is not theft, but something deeper. Revenge, perhaps, or fear of exposure. As they left the cabin, Poirot paused, his eyes narrowing. We must learn more about Lady Ashford's relationships. The notebook suggests debts and threats, C.D. and L.G. Clara Duval and Leonard Grayson. Perhaps, but there is more. Miss Travers knows something she has not yet revealed. And Mrs. Grayson, her fear is palpable. Tomorrow we search the cabins, with the captain's permission. Every detail matters, Hastings. The night stretched on, the Sapphire Queen a floating prison for its passengers. Poirot retired to his cabin, but Hastings knew his friend would not sleep. The little grey cells were at work, piecing together the mosaic of clues, and the truth, though still shrouded, was beginning to take shape. Chapter 5. The red herring's image. First light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the Mediterranean in hues of rose and gold. But aboard the Sapphire Queen, the beauty of the morning was lost on its passengers. The yacht anchored off. The coast of Capri remained a gilded cage, its opulent interiors tainted by the spectre of murder. It was 6:30 a.m. on August 18th, 1925, and Hercule Poirot, ever punctual, stood on the deck, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the dishevelled appearances of the guests who had barely slept. Captain Arthur Hastings, bleary-eyed but alert, joined his friend, noting the detective's calm demeanour. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with purpose, his moustache perfectly symmetrical, as if the chaos of the previous night had only sharpened. His focus, the Capri authorities had yet to arrive, delayed by rough seas and Captain Hargrove. The yacht's harried commander had placed the vessel under strict lockdown. No one could leave, and the crew had been instructed to watch the guests closely. Poirot, however, needed no external authority to proceed. "The police will come, Hastings," he said, his voice low. "But they will see only the surface, the dagger, the blood. It is Hercule Poirot who will uncover the truth beneath." He held his small black notebook, its pages now dense with observations. The cryptic notebook entry CDOs 10,000. Refused. LG threatens, the cigar smoke, the porthole scratch. The mysterious key. The morning's task was to search the guests' cabins, a plan Poirot had secured with Captain Hargrove's reluctant approval. "We must tread carefully, mon ami," Poirot cautioned Hastings as they approached the first cabin. "The guilty will hide their secrets, but they cannot hide from the little grey cells." The search, Poirot explained, was not only for physical evidence but for the psychological tells, the reactions of the suspects when confronted with scrutiny. They began with Miss Penelope Travers' cabin, the secretary's small, orderly space, reflecting her unassuming demeanour. Her belongings were sparse: a few plain dresses, a typewriter, a stack of correspondence. Poirot's eyes lingered on a locked diary tucked beneath a pile of letters. "Mademoiselle," he said, as Miss Travers hovered nervously, "this diary, may I see it?" Her face paled, but she nodded, producing a key from her pocket. The diary revealed meticulous notes on Lady Ashford's appointments, but one entry, dated a week prior, caught Poirot's attention. "Beat threatens to expose CD, must act soon." Poirot's eyebrow arched. "You knew of a conflict between Lady Ashford and Mademoiselle Duval?" "None," Miss Travers stammered. I only recorded what I heard." "Lady Ashford was angry with Clara something about a loan, a scandal. I didn't pry." Her hands trembled, and Poirot noted her unease, dismissing her with a polite nod, but a mental note to return to her later. Dr. Felix Mortimer's cabin was next, its air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and tobacco. A box of Cuban cigars sat prominently on his dresser, confirming his habit. But Poirot's interest was drawn to a medical bag containing a vial of sedative, its label partially torn. "Doctor," Poirot said, holding up the vial, "this sedative strong enough to incapacitate, perhaps. Did you administer anything to Lady Ashford recently?" Mortimer's tick flared, his voice defensive. "I prescribed her a mild tonic months ago, nothing more. That vial is for my own use insomnia, you see." Poirot's expression remained neutral, but his notebook gained another entry. Miss Clara Duval's cabin was a whirlwind of silk gowns and perfume bottles, a stark contrast to her poised exterior. Poirot found a crumpled letter in her waste-basket, its handwriting matching Lady Ashford's. It read, "Clara, your debt remains unpaid. I will not be ignored." Poirot tucked the letter into his pocket, his eyes meeting Clara's defiant gaze. "You claimed friendship with Lady Ashford, mademoiselle, yet this suggests otherwise. Care to explain?" Clara's lips parted, but she recovered quickly. "She was pressuring me, yes, but I didn't kill her. I was in the saloon." Her voice rose, and Poirot noted the crack in her composure. Dotma and Mrs. Grayson's shared cabin revealed little at first. Expensive luggage, tailored suits, but Poirot's keen eye spotted a pair of gloves beneath Evelyn Grayson's pillow, one stained with a faint dark smear. "Madam," he said, holding the glove, "this stained blood, perhaps? You were in your cabin during the critical time." "None." Evelyn's face drained of colour, and Leonard Grayson interjected, "That's nonsense. My wife was with me. Those gloves are old, probably ink." Poirot's silence was more damning than any question, and he moved on, the glove carefully wrapped in his handkerchief. Dotma. Victor Langston's cabin was the last, its austerity broken only by his leather-bound journal. Poirot requested to see it, but Langston clutched it tightly. "It's personal," he snapped. "Legal notes, privileged." Poirot's smile was disarming. "Of course, monsieur." But in a murder investigation, nothing is truly private. Reluctantly, Langston handed it over, revealing pages of cryptic shorthand. One entry, dated the previous day, read, "B.A. threatens L.G. Ray. Contract. Dangerous." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You knew of a dispute between Lady Ashford and Monsieur Grayson, oui? Why did you not mention this?" Langston's face tightened. "I'm her solicitor. I protect my client's interests, even in death." His tone was cold, but his fingers twitched. Betraying nerves dropped by 9 a.m., the searches were complete, and Poirot retreated to the deck with Hastings to review their findings. The red herrings. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low, "they multiply. The cigar smoke points to Dr. Mortimer, but it is too obvious. The glove suggests Madame Grayson, yet her husband defends her fiercely. The letter implicates Mademoiselle Duval, and the diary and journal point to secrets held by Miss Travers and Monsieur Langston. But which is the true thread?" Hastings frowned. "The police will suspect Miss Travers she was the last to see Lady Ashford alive, and that diary entry is damning." Poirot shook his head. "None, Hastings. The obvious is rarely the truth. Miss Travers is frightened, but not guilty. Her diary records what she overheard, not what she did. The Keller is clever, planting clues to mislead. The porthole scratch, the open safe, these are distractions. We must focus on the motives. The notebook's entries, debts. Threats suggest Lady Ashford held power over these people. But who feared her enough to kill?" As the morning sun climbed higher, Poirot's mind churned, sifting through the clues. The sedative, the glove, the letter, the journal. The Sapphire Queen was a microcosm of secrets, and Poirot was determined to unravel them, one contradiction at a time. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. Mediterranean sun climbed higher, bathing the Sapphire Queen in a golden glow. That did little to dispel the chill of suspicion among its passengers. It was 10:30 a.m. on August 18, 1925, and the yacht, still anchored off Capri, awaited the delayed arrival of the local authorities. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the absence of official support, continued his investigation with the precision of a master craftsman. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing beside him on the upper deck, felt the weight of the mounting clues: the jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, the cigar smoke, the stained glove, the cryptic notebook entries. Yet it was Poirot's unerring focus on the smallest details that promised to unravel the mystery of Lady Beatrice Ashford's murder. Poirot's morning had been productive, his searches of the guests' cabins yielding a trove of subtle evidence. Miss Travers' diary, Dr. Mortimer's sedative, Miss Duval's incriminating letter, Mrs. Grayson's stained glove, Mr. Langston's secretive journal. Each item was a thread in the tapestry of deception, but Poirot knew that one detail, properly understood, could illuminate the entire pattern. "Hastings," he said, his voice low and deliberate, "the truth lies in the minutiae. A gesture, a word, a misplaced object, these are the keys to the human heart." Their next task was to examine the yacht's layout, particularly the corridor leading to Lady Ashford's cabin. Poirot led Hastings to the narrow passageway, its polished teak walls adorned with brass fittings, and paused at the spot where Miss Travers claimed to have heard a door close just before the scream at 8:45 p.m. "This corridor," Poirot said, gesturing, "is the artery of the crime. It connects the saloon to the cabins, and it is here that the killer moved." "But which door did Mademoiselle Travers hear?" Hastings studied the layout. Lady Ashford's cabin was at the corridor's end, with 3 cabins on either side. Dr. Mortimer's, Miss Duval's, and the Graysons on the left, Miss Travers, Mr. Langston's, and an unused guest cabin on the right. Each door was identical, heavy oak with brass handles, designed to muffle sound. "It's impossible to tell which door she heard," Hastings said, frowning. "They're all so close." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Non, mon ami. It is not impossible. It is a matter of precision." He knelt, examining the floor, and pointed to a faint scuff mark near Miss Duval's door, a smudge of black polish, barely noticeable. "This mark," he said, "is fresh, a shoe, perhaps, caught in haste, and regard as the handle of Mademoiselle Duval's door. It is slightly misaligned." as if forced or gripped tightly. He tested the handle, noting a faint creak. This door was opened and closed in a hurry. Hastings. But by whom? Returning to the saloon. Poirot requested the crew's assistance in locating the source of the jeweled dagger, which he suspected was part of the yacht's decor. Captain Hargrove, visibly strained, confirmed that the dagger was one of a pair displayed in the saloon's glass case. A gift to Lady Ashford from a Persian diplomat. The other is still in the case, Hargrove said, pointing to the display. Poirot examined the remaining dagger, noting its identical sapphire-encrusted hilt. So, he mused, the weapon was taken from this very room, before or during dinner. The killer was bold, planning in plain sight. Poirot's attention returned to the small key found in Lady Ashford's safe. He suspected it unlocked something significant, a drawer, a box, a hidden compartment. With Hargrove's permission, he searched the owner's cabin again, focusing on the desk. Beneath a pile of papers, he found a locked drawer, its keyhole matching the key's size. With a soft click, the drawer opened, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a red ribbon. The topmost letter, addressed to Lady Ashford, was in Leonard Grayson's bold handwriting. Beatrice, your demands are extortion. I'll fight you to the end. The date was 2 weeks prior. Hastings. Poirot said, his voice tinged with excitement, this is no mere debt. Monsieur Grayson was in conflict with Lady Ashford, perhaps over a business deal gone sour. The notebook's LG threatens, it points to him. But why kill her now? With the sapphire untouched, Hastings ventured a theory. Could Grayson have wanted revenge if she was blackmailing him? Maybe he snapped. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Possible, but incomplete. The psychology is not yet clear. Grayson is brash but not impulsive. We must consider the others. Miss Duval's debt, Miss Travers' knowledge, Mrs. Grayson's fear, Dr. Mortimer's sedative, Langston's secrets. Each has a motive, but only one had the opportunity to test his theory about the corridor. Poirot conducted a small experiment. He asked Miss Travers to recreate her movements from 8:30 to 8:45 p.m., timing her as she walked from Lady Ashford's cabin to the saloon and back. The journey took precisely 2 minutes, leaving a 13-minute window for the murder. Poirot then asked each guest to demonstrate their claimed movements. During that time, noting their pace and demeanor, Clara Duval's confident stride faltered when she passed her own cabin door. Even Grayson's hands shook as she mimicked fetching her shawl. Dr. Mortimer's tic intensified as he recounted his conversation in the saloon. The most telling moment came when Poirot asked Mr. Langston to show his path to the deck for his cigarette. The solicitor's steps were measured, but he paused near Lady Ashford's cabin, his eyes flicking to the door. You hesitated, monsieur, Poirot observed. Why? Langston's face tightened. I was merely recalling the moment. The sea was rough and I steadied myself. His explanation was plausible, but Poirot's notebook gained another entry. Langston hesitates near BAS door. By noon. Poirot and Hastings retired to the deck to confer. The scuff mark, the dagger, the letter, the key, Poirot said, ticking off the clues. They point to a Keller who knew Lady Ashford's habits, her cabin, her secrets. The corridor is key. Hastings. Someone entered or exited during that 15-minute window, and the door Miss Travers heard is our pivot point. But we must beware the red herrings, the glove, the porthole. They distract from the truth. Hastings rubbed his temples. It's a tangle. Poirot. Everyone seems guilty, yet no one fits perfectly. Patience, mon ami, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. The truth is like a melody. It emerges when the discord is resolved. Tonight, we will press harder. The Keller is among us, and they will make a mistake. As the sun blazed overhead, the Sapphire Queen remained a floating enigma, its secrets locked in the hearts of its passengers. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, weaving the clues into a pattern only he could see. Chapter 7. More lies. Surface-seethed Sapphire Queen shimmered under the midday sun, its polished decks reflecting the relentless glare of August 18th, 1925. The Mediterranean stretched endlessly around the yacht, its calm surface belying the storm of secrets brewing within. Hercule Poirot, His impeccable suit untouched by the heat stood in the dining saloon, his green eyes scanning the assembled guests with the precision of a hawk. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt the weight of the morning's discoveries, the scuff mark, the jewelled dagger, the incriminating letter, the mysterious key to a piece in the puzzle of Lady Beatrice Ashford's murder. Yet it was the human heart, Poirot insisted, that held the key to the crime, and now, as the afternoon approached, new lies were beginning to unravel. The Capri authorities remained delayed by rough seas, leaving Poirot as the sole arbiter of justice aboard the yacht, the guests, confined to the saloon under Captain Hargrave's watchful eye, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their earlier civility fraying under the strain of suspicion. Poirot had gathered them for a second round of questioning, this time with a sharper edge, designed to provoke reactions and expose contradictions. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice smooth but unyielding. The truth is like a tide, it recedes, but it always returns. Let us examine the events of last night once more, for some among you have not been entirely forthcoming. Poirot's gaze settled on Miss Clara Duval, the French actress whose scarlet lips were set in a defiant line. Mademoiselle Duval, he said, producing the crumpled letter found in her cabin. This note from Lady Ashford suggests a debt unpaid, a demand unmet. You claimed friendship, yet this speaks of conflict. Care to elaborate? Clara's eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. It was a misunderstanding, Monsieur Poirot. Beatrice lent me money for my theatre troupe, a trifle, £10,000. She grew impatient, yes, but I was arranging repayment. I had no reason to harm her. Her fingers toyed with a pearl necklace, a gesture Poirot noted as a sign of nerves, and yet, Poirot pressed, your cabin door bears a scuff mark, fresh from last night. Were you perhaps in the corridor during the fatal 15 minutes? Despite your claim to have remained in the saloon, Clara's composure faltered, her cheeks flushing. I may have stepped out for air, briefly. I don't recall. It was a chaotic evening. Her evasion was palpable, and the other guests exchanged glances, their unease growing. Poirot turned to Mr. Leonard Grayson, the American industrialist, whose letter to Lady Ashford had revealed a bitter dispute. Monsieur Grayson, your note to Lady Ashford spoke of extortion and a fight to the end. A business deal, perhaps, or something more personal. You were in the saloon, you say, but your wife was absent for a time. Can you account for her movements? Grayson's face reddened, his hands clenching. I told you. Poirot, I was with Dr. Mortimer, talking business. Evelyn went for her shawl, nothing more. You're barking up the wrong tree. His voice was loud, but his eyes darted to his wife, who sat pale and silent. Mrs. Evelyn Grayson, when questioned, repeated her story with a tremor in her voice. I fetched my shawl, as I said. I was back before the scream. I saw no one in the corridor. Yet her hands twisted in her lap, and Poirot's sharp eyes caught the faint stain on her glove, now safely in his possession. Madam, he said gently, this glove, found in your cabin, bears a mark that resembles blood. Can you explain? Evelyn's breath caught, and for a moment it seemed she might faint. It's ink, as Leonard said. I spilled some while writing a letter. Please, I had nothing to do with this. Her plea was desperate, and Mr. Grayson's arm went protectively around her, though his expression was strained. Dr. Felix Mortimer, the next to be questioned, shifted uncomfortably under Poirot's scrutiny. The cigar smoke in Lady Ashford's cabin pointed to him, yet he insisted he had smoked only before dinner. I was in the saloon, he said, his tic more pronounced. Ask Grayson, he'll confirm it. Poirot noted the doctor's sedative vial, its torn label suggesting recent use. This sedative, Doctor, Poirot said, holding up the vial. Could it have been used to subdue Lady Ashford before the dagger struck? Mortimer's face paled. Absolutely not. That's for my insomnia. I haven't prescribed anything for Lady Ashford since last year. His denial was vehement, but his trembling hands betrayed his fear. Victor Langston, the solicitor, was the last to face Poirot's questions. His journal, with its cryptic note about Lady Ashford threatening LG, had piqued the detectives' interest. "Monsieur Langston," Poirot said, "you knew of a conflict between Lady Ashford and Monsieur Grayson, yet you withheld this information. Why?" Langston's pinched face tightened. "As her solicitor, I'm bound by confidentiality. Lady Ashford was negotiating a contract with Grayson, a mining venture in South America. He stood to lose millions if she pulled out, but that's all I'll say." His refusal to elaborate only deepened Poirot's suspicion. As the questioning concluded, Poirot dismissed the guests, but not before noticing a subtle exchange. Miss Penelope Travers, the secretary, lingered near the door, her eyes meeting Clara Duval's in a fleeting, charged glance. It was a moment of unspoken communication, and Poirot filed it away. His mind racing. In the privacy of the deck, Poirot conferred with Hastings. "The lies multiply." "Mon ami," he said, his voice low. "Mademoiselle Duval conceals her movements." In the corridor, Madame Grayson's glove suggests more than ink. Dr. Mortimer's sedative raises questions, and Monsieur Langston guards his journal too closely. But it is Miss Travers who intrigues me. She knows more than she says. Her diary, her hesitation. She's the quiet one, but the quiet ones often see the most. Hastings frowned. "The police, when they arrive, will focus on Miss Travers. She was the last to see Lady Ashford alive." Poirot agreed, but she is not the killer. Her fear is of discovery, not guilt. The scuff mark near Mademoiselle Duval's door, the letter from Grayson. The sedative. These point to a deeper web. Lady Ashford held power over these people, debts, secrets, betrayals. We must find the thread that ties them together. Poirot's gaze drifted to the horizon where the sea met the sky. "Tonight, Hastings, we will set a trap. The Kelly is clever, but they cannot resist the pressure of Poirot's scrutiny. A single mistake, and the truth will emerge." The Sapphire Queen remained a floating labyrinth of motives and alibis, but Poirot's little grey cells were weaving the clues into a pattern, one that would soon reveal the heart of the crime. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. Sapphire Queen lay silent under the oppressive heat of the afternoon sun, its decks shimmering as the Mediterranean stretched endlessly around it. It was 2 p.m. on August 18, 1925, and the yacht, once a symbol of opulence, now felt like a stage where every glance and whisper carried the weight of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, his immaculate suit unyielding to the heat, stood in the dining saloon, his green eyes scanning the guests with a quiet intensity. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, sensed a shift in the air, a moment where the carefully guarded facades of the suspects were beginning to crack. The murder of Lady Beatrice Ashford had woven a web of lies, and Poirot was ready to pull the thread that would unravel it. The morning's revelations, the scuff mark near Clara Duval's cabin, the incriminating letter from Leonard Grayson, the stained glove in Evelyn Grayson's possession, the sedative in Dr. Mortimer's bag, the cryptic entries in Victor Langston's journal, and the secretive diary of Penelope Travers had tightened the noose around the suspects. Poirot's methodical questioning had exposed inconsistencies, but it was the emotional undercurrents, the hidden fears and resentments that now promised to break the case open. "Hastings," Poirot murmured, his voice low. "The heart betrays what the tongue conceals. We must watch for the moment when control falters." Poirot had requested the guests gather in the saloon for what he called a reconstruction of the fatal 15 minutes between 8:30 and 8:45 p.m. the previous evening. The exercise, he explained, was to clarify their movements, but Hastings knew it was a psychological ploy, a chance to press the suspects. Until one revealed more than intended, the guests filed in, their faces a mix of apprehension and defiance. Clara Duval's scarlet gown seemed a deliberate assertion of confidence, though her eyes were wary. Leonard Grayson's bluster was tempered by fatigue, his wife Evelyn clinging to his arm, her delicate features taut with strain. Dr. Felix Mortimer's tic was more pronounced, his cigar-scented hands fidgeting. Penelope Travers clutched her spectacles, her mousy demeanor belying her sharp gaze, while Victor Langston's pinched face was a mask of guarded reserve, his journal tucked under his arm. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice commanding. "Silence! We stand at a crossroads. A woman is dead, struck down by a jeweled dagger in her own cabin. The star of Capri remains untouched, yet secrets abound, debts, threats, betrayals. Let us retrace your steps, moment by moment, to find the truth." He held up the small key from Lady Ashford's safe, its glint catching the light. "This key, found in the safe, may unlock more than a drawer. It may unlock a motive. Let us begin." Poirot directed Miss Penelope Travers to start, asking her to reenact her departure from Lady Ashford's cabin at 8:30 p.m. She walked to the corridor, her steps hesitant, and paused near the saloon door. "I heard a door close," she said, her voice trembling, "just before the scream at 8:45. I can't be sure which one." Her eyes darted toward Clara Duval's cabin, and Poirot noted the glance, his pen scratching in his notebook. Next, Clara Duval was called to demonstrate her claim of remaining in the saloon. She sauntered to the center of the room, her fan fluttering, but her poise faltered when Poirot asked, "Mademoiselle, you say you stepped out for air. Show us where you went." Clara hesitated, then walked to the deck, pausing near the corridor. "Entrance. I was here, briefly," she said, her voice tight. "I saw no one." Yet her fingers gripped her fan so tightly that a feather snapped, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. Evelyn Grayson's reenactment was the most telling. Asked to show her trip to fetch her shawl, she moved to the corridor, her steps faltering near her cabin. Poirot stopped her. "Madam, your glove stained. Perhaps with blood was found under your pillow. You say it is ink, but let us test your story. Why did you linger in the corridor?" Evelyn's face crumpled and she sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. I didn't linger," she whispered. "I was frightened. I heard someone moving, but I didn't see who." Leonard Grayson leaped to his feet, his face red. "This is harassment." "Poirot, my wife is innocent. She was back in the saloon before the scream. Ask anyone." But his outburst only drew attention to Evelyn's distress, and the other guests shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Mortimer, when asked to recount his conversation with Grayson, stumbled over his words, his tic betraying his nerves. "We were discussing a medical journal," he insisted, but his eyes flicked to the cigar box on the sideboard, and Poirot noted the connection to the smoke in Lady Ashford's cabin. Victor Langston, reenacting his cigarette break on the deck, moved with deliberate calm, but his hesitation near Lady Ashford's cabin door mirrored his earlier pause, and Poirot's gaze lingered on him. The reconstruction ended with a charged silence, the guests' nerves frayed by Poirot's relentless scrutiny. It was then that Penelope Travers broke, her voice rising in a sudden, anguished outburst. "I can't bear it," she cried, her spectacles slipping as she clutched the table. "Lady Ashford was cruel. She held us all in her grip," Clara owed. "Her money, Leonard was ruined by her, and I knew too much." Her words hung in the air, a confession not of guilt, but of complicity in Lady Ashford's web of control. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Travers, what did you know? Speak, and let the truth ease your burden." Tears streamed down Penelope's face. She was blackmailing Clara £10,000 for a scandal she threatened to expose, and Leonard she outmaneuvered him in a deal, threatened to ruin his company. "I wrote her letters, kept her secrets, but I didn't kill her, I swear it." Her sobs echoed in the saloon, and Clara Duval's face paled, her fan dropping to the floor. The other guests erupted in murmurs, their own secrets now at risk of exposure. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "Merci, Mademoiselle Travers. Your candor is a step toward the truth, but there is more to uncover. The killer is among us, and they are watching, listening. They will not escape Hercule Poirot." As the guests dispersed, their faces etched with fear and guilt, Poirot conferred with Hastings on the deck. "The dam has broken, mon ami," he said. "Miss Travers has revealed the motives: blackmail, financial ruin. But the killer is still hidden, using the scuff mark, the glove, the portholer's distractions. We are close, Hastings. Tonight, we will set a trap to catch a murderer." The Sapphire Queen rocked gently, its secret spilling like the tide. and Poirot's little grey cells burned brightly, poised to illuminate the final truth. Chapter 9. The trap is set. Sapphire Queen lay bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon, the Mediterranean sun casting long shadows across its polished decks. It was 4 p.m. on August 18th, 1925, and the yacht, anchored off the coast of Capri, pulsed with an undercurrent of dread. The murder of Lady Beatrice Ashford had stripped away the veneer of civility among the guests, and Penelope Travers' emotional outburst in the saloon had exposed a web of blackmail and betrayal. Hercule Poirot, his moustache as immaculate as his logic, stood on the upper deck, his green eyes gleaming with the certainty of a predator closing in on its prey. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, sensing that the investigation was nearing a critical juncture. The Capri authorities remained delayed, leaving Poirot as the sole arbiter of justice aboard the yacht. The clues: the jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, the cigar smoke, the scuff mark near Clara Duval's cabin, the stained glove, the cryptic notebook entries. And now Penelope's revelations had painted a vivid picture of motive, but the killer's identity remained elusive. Poirot's morning had been a masterclass in observation, his searches and interrogations peeling back layers of deceit. Yet it was Penelope's confession that Lady Ashford had been blackmailing Clara Duval and threatening Leonard Grayson's fortune that had shifted the investigation's focus. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate. The killer is clever, but they cannot withstand the pressure of Hercule Poirot's method. Tonight, we set a trap to force their hand. Poirot's plan was simple yet ingenious, designed to exploit the psychological strain weighing on the suspects. He instructed Captain Hargrove to gather the guests in the saloon at 8 p.m., precisely 24 hours after the murder. "We will recreate the scene," Poirot explained to Hastings, but with a twist. "I will announce a discovery, a piece of evidence that threatens to expose the killer. The guilty one will react, mon ami, and in that reaction we will find the truth." As the afternoon waned, Poirot and Hastings revisited Lady Ashford's cabin, where the body had been carefully covered but left undisturbed at Poirot's insistence. The jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, and the open safe remained as they were, silent witnesses to the crime. Poirot's attention returned to the small key found in the safe, which had unlocked the desk drawer containing Grayson's threatening letter. This key, he mused, may yet have another purpose. There is a locked compartment somewhere on this yacht, a diary, a box, a secret. We must find it. With Hargrove's permission, Poirot searched the saloon, focusing on the display case that had once held the jeweled dagger's twin. Beneath the case, he found a hidden panel, its lock matching the key's design. With a soft click, the panel opened, revealing a small velvet box containing a single photograph, Lady Ashford, younger and radiant, arm in arm with a man whose face was obscured by a burn mark. A note on the back, in Lady Ashford's handwriting. "Read CD and VL, Paris 1919. Never forgive." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Clara Duval and Victor Langston, together with Lady Ashford. This is no coincidence, Hastings. A past betrayal, perhaps, fuels this crime. The discovery electrified Poirot, confirming his suspicion that the murder was rooted in personal vendettas. He tucked the photograph into his pocket, his mind racing. The trap must be precise. He told Hastings, "We will hint at this. Photograph, suggest it reveals the killer's identity, and watch their reactions. The guilty one will betray themselves." At 8 p.m., the guests assembled in the saloon, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Clara Duval's scarlet gown was a defiant statement, but her eyes were shadowed. Leonard Grayson's bluster had dulled, his arm around Evelyn, whose delicate hands trembled. Dr. Felix Mortimer's tick was relentless, his cigar-scented fingers fidgeting. Penelope Travers clutched her spectacles, her outburst earlier leaving her subdued, while Victor Langston's pinched face was a mask of control, his journal never far from his side. Poirot stood at the head of the table, the star of Capri placed before him as a prop, its gleam drawing every eye. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice resonant, "we are close to the truth. Lady Ashford was murdered not for her sapphire, but for her secrets. She held power over your debts, scandals, betrayals. And today, I have found her. Clue that points directly to the killer. He paused, producing the velvet box but not opening it. A photograph, hidden in this very saloon, reveals a connection from the past motive for murder. The reaction was immediate. Clara Duval's fan froze mid-flutter, her face paling. Victor Langston's hand tightened on his journal, his knuckles white. Evelyn Grayson gasped softly, her eyes darting to her husband, while Leonard Grayson's jaw clenched, his cufflinks glinting as he shifted. Dr. Mortimer's tick intensified, his gaze fixed on the box. Penelope Travers, however, remained still, her eyes downcast as if resigned. Poirot continued, his voice a velvet blade. This photograph, taken in Paris in 1919, links to among you to Lady Ashford. In a moment of betrayal, who among you fears its revelation? Speak now, or the truth will find you. He opened the box, revealing the photograph but keeping the burned face hidden. Watching the guests like a hawk, Clara Duval broke the silence, her voice sharp. This is nonsense. Monsieur Poirot, I knew Beatrice in Paris, yes, but there was no betrayal. She was jealous, always jealous. That photograph means nothing. Her outburst drew murmurs, and Poirot noted her desperation. Victor Langston spoke next, his tone icy. If you're implying I'm in that photograph, you're mistaken. I met Lady Ashford only in a professional capacity. This is a distraction. Yet his fingers twitched, betraying his calm. Evelyn Grayson's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know about any photograph. Please stop this. Her husband's arm tightened around her, his eyes blazing with defiance. Poirot closed the box, his expression unreadable. The truth is near as Amis. The killer is among you, and this photograph will expose them. I advise you to reflect carefully tonight. He dismissed the guests, their faces a mosaic of fear and calculation. On the deck, Poirot conferred with Hastings. The trap is set, mon ami, he said. Clara Duval's panic, Langston's defensiveness, Evelyn's fear, they reveal much. The photograph is a key, but not the only one. The scuff mark, the glove, the dagger all point to a killer who planned carefully but cannot withstand scrutiny. Tonight, they will act and we will be ready. The Sapphire Queen rocked gently, its secrets teetering on the edge of revelation, as Poirot's little grey cells prepared for the final act. Chapter 10. The revealed Sapphire Queen lay shrouded in the velvet darkness of the Mediterranean night, its decks silent save for the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. It was 9 p.m. on August 18, 1925, and the yacht, still anchored, off Capri, pulsed with the tension of a tightly wound spring. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a beacon of order in the chaos, stood in the dining saloon, where the guests had been summoned for what he promised would be the final act of this tragedy. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his friend's side, felt the weight of anticipation. The trap Poirot had set with the mysterious photograph had stirred the suspects, and now the moment of truth had arrived. The saloon was lit by the soft glow of chandeliers, their light glinting off the star of Capri, which Poirot had placed at the centre of the table as a silent challenge. The guests sat in a semicircle, their faces a gallery of unease. Clara Duval's scarlet lips were set in a defiant line, her fan motionless. Leonard Grayson's bluster had given way to a grim silence, his arm around Evelyn, whose delicate features were taut with fear. Dr. Felix Mortimer's tic betrayed his nerves. His cigar-scented hands clasped tightly, Penelope Travers clutched, her spectacles, her eyes darting nervously. Victor Langston's pinched face was a mask of control, his journal clutched like a shield. Captain Hargrove stood by the door, his crewmen stationed to prevent any sudden flight. Poirot's voice cut through the silence, calm but commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, the time has come to unveil the truth. Lady Beatrice Ashford was murdered not for her sapphire, but for the secrets she held, secrets that bound you all in a web of fear and betrayal. Tonight, Hercule Poirot will reveal the killer, using only the little grey cells and the clues you have unwittingly provided. He paced slowly, his eyes scanning each face. Let us reconstruct the crime. At 8:30 p.m. on August 17th, Lady Ashford left this saloon with Mademoiselle Travers to fetch the Star of Coppery. At 8:45, a scream announced her death, a jeweled dagger in her back. The safe was open, the sapphire untouched, a faint scent of cigar smoke in the air, a scuff mark near Mademoiselle Duval's cabin, a stained glove in Madame Grayson's possession, a sedative in Dr. Mortimer's bag, cryptic notes in Mademoiselle Travers' diary and Monsieur Langston's journal, a photograph from 1919. These are the threads of the tapestry. Poirot held up the photograph, its burned face still obscured. This image, found in a hidden panel, links to a view to Lady Ashford in a moment of betrayal. But let us begin with the timeline. Mademoiselle Travers, you left Lady Ashford at 8:30. Hearing a door close just before the scream, Mademoiselle Duval, you admit to stepping out for air. Madame Grayson, you fetched your shawl. Monsieur Grayson and Dr. Mortimer claim to have been in conversation here. Monsieur Langston was on deck, smoking a cigarette. Yet someone entered the cabin and struck the fatal blow. He paused, his gaze settling on Clara Duval. Mademoiselle Duval, your debt to Lady Ashford £10,000 was a source of conflict. Her letter demanded repayment, or she would expose a scandal. Your fan snapped under pressure, and the scuff mark near your cabin door suggests you were in the corridor. Did you confront her? Clara's eyes blazed. I told you. I was on deck. I owed her money, yes, but I didn't kill her. Her voice cracked, and Poirot noted the tremor. Turning to Evelyn Grayson, Poirot held up the stained glove. Madam, this glove, found under your pillow, bears a mark resembling blood. You were in the corridor, alone, during the critical time. Your fear is evident. Fear of what? Did Lady Ashford threaten your marriage, your future? Evelyn's hands trembled, her voice barely audible. It's ink, I swear. I heard someone in the corridor, but I didn't see who. I was afraid. Leonard Grayson's arm tightened around her, his face darkening. Poirot's eyes flicked to Dr. Mortimer. Doctor, your cigars matched the smoke in the cabin, and your sedative could have subdued Lady Ashford. Your tic betrays your nerves. Did you fear her knowledge of a past mistake? Mortimer's face paled, his tic frantic. I was in the saloon. I haven't smoked since before dinner. That sedative is for me, not her. His denial was vehement, but his hands shook. Poirot turned to Victor Langston. Monsieur, your journal notes Lady Ashford's threat to Monsieur Grayson, yet you withheld this, and this photograph, CD and VL, Paris, 1919, places you with Lady Ashford and Mademoiselle Duval. What secret binds you? Langston's voice was cold. I was her solicitor. That photograph is irrelevant. I was on deck, smoking a cigarette, not a cigar. His fingers gripped his journal, and Poirot's gaze lingered. Finally, Poirot addressed Penelope Travers. Mademoiselle, your diary reveals Lady Ashford's blackmail. You knew her secrets, yet you remained loyal. Why? Penelope's voice was steady, though her eyes glistened. She paid me well, but she was cruel. I recorded her threats, but I didn't kill her. I heard the door, that's all. Poirot nodded, stepping back. The clues point to many, but only one fits the pattern. The killer used the dagger from this saloon, taken before dinner. Knowing Lady Ashford would be alone, the scuff mark, the glove, the porthole scratch, these are distractions. The true clue is the photograph. He revealed the image, showing the burned face. The man in this photograph is Victor Langston, whose affair with Clara Duval in 1919 was discovered by Lady Ashford. She never forgave, and she used this secret to control him. Langston's face drained of colour. Lies, that's not me. But his voice cracked and his journal slipped to the floor. Poirot continued, relentless. You, Monsieur Langston, were on deck, but not smoking. You slipped into the corridor, entered Lady Ashford's cabin, and struck her with the dagger you had taken earlier. The scuff mark was yours, made in haste as you fled to Clara's cabin to plant the letter, framing her. The cigar smoke was a red herring left by a half-smoked cigar you placed in the cabin. The porthole scratch was your final deception, suggesting an outsider, Langston stood, his voice rising. "This is absurd. You have no proof." Poirot smiled. "Your journal, monsieur. Its shorthand notes your plan. BA must be silenced. And the key from the safe, it unlocked the panel where you hid the photograph. Fearing its discovery, your hesitation near her cabin door betrayed you." Langston lunged for the door, but Hargreaves' crewman seized him. Clara Duval gasped, her hand to her mouth, while the others stared in shock. Poirot's voice was calm, Lady Ashford's. "Blackmail drove you to murder, Monsieur Langston. You could not risk her exposing your past with Mademoiselle Duval, which would ruin your career." As Langston was led away, the saloon fell silent, the weight of truth settling over the guests. Poirot's little grey cells had triumphed, unravelling the tapestry of lies with surgical precision. Chapter 11. The reflection-faced Sapphire Queen lay still under the starry canopy of the Mediterranean night, its opulent decks hushed in the aftermath of Hercule Poirot's dramatic revelation. It was 10 p.m. on August 18th, 1925, and the saloon, once a stage for tension and deceit, now bore the quiet of resolution. The guests, shaken by the unmasking of Victor Langston as Lady Beatrice Ashford's killer, had dispersed to their cabins, their faces etched with relief, guilt, and lingering unease. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the saloon's grand windows, gazing at the dark sea, while Poirot, his moustache as impeccable as ever, sat at the table. The star of Capri before him, its gleam subdued under the chandelier's soft light. The Capri authorities were expected at dawn, and Langston, now confined to a locked cabin under Captain Hargreaves' guard, awaited his fate. The jewelled dagger, the cryptic notebook, the stained glove, the scuff mark, the photograph from 1919 all had played their part in Poirot's meticulous unravelling of the crime. Yet, as Hastings had learned over their years together, Poirot's work was not complete until he had reflected on the deeper truths the case revealed. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant, "a crime is not merely a puzzle to be solved. It is a mirror to the human soul, reflecting its desires, its fears, its frailties." Hastings turned from the window, his mind still reeling from the evening's climax. "You were brilliant, Poirot," he said, admiration evident in his tone. "The way you used that photograph to trap Langston, it was masterful. But how did you know it was him, and not Clara Duval or one of the others?" Poirot leaned back, his hands folded neatly, his green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. "Mon ami, the truth lies in the harmony of the clues. Each suspect had a motive: Clara's debt, Grayson's financial ruin, Evelyn's fear, Mortimer's secrets, Trevor's knowledge. But only Langston's actions fit the pattern. The photograph, marked C, D, and VL, Paris 1919, was the key. It revealed a past affair with Mademoiselle Duval, a scandal Lady Ashford used to control him. His journal, with its shorthand note, BA must be silenced, confirmed his intent. The scuff mark near Clara's door was his, made as he planted the letter to frame her. The cigar smoke, a deliberate misdirection, came from a cigar he placed in the cabin, knowing it would point to Dr. Mortimer. Hastings nodded, piecing it together. "And the porthole scratch, another red herring? Precisement," Poirot said. Langston scratched the porthole to suggest an outsider, but the angle of the dagger, the undisturbed safe, the presence of the star of Capri, these told me the crime was intimate, committed by one who knew Lady Ashford's habits. The key from the safe unlocked the hidden panel where Langston had hidden the photograph, fearing its discovery. His hesitation in the corridor during our reconstruction betrayed his guilt. The little grey cells. Hastings, they see what the eyes overlook. The detective's words carried a weight of philosophy, and Hastings sensed Poirot was about to impart one of his characteristic reflections. Lady Ashford, Poirot continued, was a woman of power, but power breeds enemies. She wielded secrets like a weapon: Clara's scandal, Grayson's business dealings, Langston's past. Yet her strength was a downfall she underestimated. The desperation of a man like Langston, whose career and reputation hung by a thread. The human heart, mon ami, is a fragile thing, easily swayed by fear or shame. Hastings frowned. still grappling with the moral complexity. But Langston, he seemed so controlled, so professional. To kill so coldly, with such calculation, Poirot's eyes softened. Cold, perhaps, but not without passion. His was a crime of necessity, born of a past he could not escape. In 1919, he and Clara Duval betrayed Lady Ashford's trust. Perhaps in love, perhaps in ambition. She never forgave, and when she threatened to expose him, he acted. The dagger, taken from this very saloon. Was his choice a symbol of her own extravagance turned against her? It is a tragedy, Hastings. For all involved, the saloon was silent. Save for the faint creak of the yacht's timbers, Poirot rose, his small frame commanding despite its size. Come, mon ami, let us walk the deck. The air will clear the mind, and our work here is nearly done. They stepped into the cool night, the stars above mirroring the star of Capri's gleam. Poirot paused at the railing, his gaze distant. Each case, Hastings, teaches us something of humanity. Lady Ashford sought control. Langston sought freedom, and the others, Clara, Grayson, Evelyn, Mortimer. Travers, they sought to survive. We are all bound by our desires, but it is how we choose to act that defines us. Hastings smiled faintly. You sound almost philosophical, Poirot. Do you ever tire of these cases, of peering into the darkness of people's hearts? Poirot's moustache twitched. A rare hint of a smile. Tire? Non, mon ami. The little grey cells, they thrive on the challenge. To bring order to chaos, to find truth in deception, this is the work of Hercule Poirot. But I confess, a quiet holiday would not be unwelcome. His eyes twinkled, and Hastings chuckled. Knowing such a holiday was unlikely, as they stood together. The Sapphire Queen seemed to exhale, its secrets laid bare. The Capri authorities would arrive at dawn, taking Langston into custody. But Poirot's role was complete. He had unravelled the mystery, not with force or luck, but with the relentless logic of his mind. Let us retire. Hastings, he said at last, the sea is calm and the truth is clear. Tomorrow we return to the world, but tonight we rest. With a final glance at the starlit horizon, Poirot turned and walked toward his cabin. His steps light, his mission fulfilled. The Sapphire Queen sailed on, its tragedy resolved, but its story etched forever in the minds of those who had witnessed Poirot's genius. Chapter 12. The echoes of Truth's Sapphire Queen lay bathed in the soft pre-dawn glow of August 19th, 1925, its polished decks glistening with dew as the Mediterranean stirred gently around it. The yacht, anchored off the coast of Capri, was no longer a prison of secrets, but a vessel of sombre resolution. Hercule Poirot, his suit as pristine as ever, stood in the dining saloon, sipping a tisane and reviewing his small black notebook, its pages dense with the clues that had unmasked Victor Langston as Lady Beatrice Ashford's murderer. Captain Arthur Hastings, bleary-eyed from the previous night's revelations, joined his friend, sensing that Poirot's work, though complete, had left ripples that demanded further reflection. The Capri authorities were due to arrive within the hour, their launch already visible on the horizon. Langston, confined under Captain Hargreaves' guard, awaited transfer to the mainland, his career and life now in ruins. The jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, the cigar smoke, the scuff mark, the stained glove, the photograph from 1919, and Penelope Travers' tearful confession had all played their parts in Poirot's masterful denouement. Yet, as Hastings had come to expect, Poirot's mind was not content with merely solving the crime. He sought to understand its deeper implications, the human frailties that had woven this tragedy. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant, a case is not merely a puzzle solved, it is a lesson in the complexities of the heart. The saloon was quiet, the remnants of the previous evening's tension lingering in the air. The star of Capri had been secured in the yacht's safe, its gleam no longer a taunt, but a reminder of the cost of greed and betrayal. The guests, though free to move about the yacht, had kept to their cabins, their spirits subdued by the weight of truth. Hastings, nursing a cup of tea, broke the silence. Poirot, you were certain it was Langston, but what if he hadn't reacted to the photograph? Could someone else have slipped through? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. Mon ami, the little grey cells do not rely on chance. Langston's guilt was written in the details, the scuff mark by Mademoiselle. Duval's door, made by his polished shoes as he planted the letter to frame her, the cigar smoke. A deliberate misdirection from a cigar he stole from Dr. Mortimer's box. The photograph, hidden in the saloon's panel, which he feared would expose his past with Clara Duval. His journal, with its note "BA must be silenced," was the final confirmation. No other suspect fit the pattern so precisely. Hastings nodded, still marvelling at Poirot's precision. But Clara Duval, she was so shaken. I thought she might confess. Oui, Poirot agreed. Her fear was real, but not of guilt. She feared the exposure of her past with Langston, a scandal Lady Ashford held over her. Her debt of £10,000 was a motive, but her movements in the corridor were innocent. She stepped out for air, as she said, but saw nothing. The scuff mark was Langston's, not hers. She was a pawn in his plan, meant to take the blame. Hastings frowned, and Evelyn Grayson's glove, that stain, it looked like blood. A clever distraction, Poirot said. The stain was indeed ink, as she claimed, but its placement under her pillow was suspicious. I believe Langston, knowing Evelyn's fear of Lady Ashford's influence over her husband, planted it to cast suspicion on her. The porthole scratch was another of his red herrings, suggesting an outsider. But the angle of the dagger and the undisturbed sapphire told me the killer was among us. Poirot sipped his tisane, his eyes distant. Lady Ashford was a formidable woman, Hastings, but her power came at a cost. She collected secrets as others collect Jules Clara's scandal, Grayson's business failures, Mortimer's questionable practices, Travers' complicity. Langston, however, was her greatest threat, for his past with Clara tied him to a betrayal she could not forgive. When she threatened to expose him, he planned her death with cold precision, using the dagger from the saloon, a weapon of her own ostentation. Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. But why the photograph? Why not destroy it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because, mon ami, Langston could not be certain it was the only copy. Lady Ashford was cunning. She may have hidden duplicates elsewhere. By concealing it in the saloon's panel, he hoped to control its discovery, but he underestimated. Hercule Poirot, the key from the safe which unlocked the panel, was his undoing, for it led me to the photograph and its note, CD in VL, Paris, 1919. Never forgive. The saloon door opened, and Captain Hargrove entered, his face weary but resolute. Monsieur Poirot, the authorities are approaching. They'll take Langston and the evidence. I don't know how to thank you. This could have torn us apart. Poirot inclined his head. It is my duty, Capitaine, to restore order where chaos reigns. But tell me, what will become of the Star of Copri? Hargrove sighed. Lady Ashford's will is with her solicitors in London. I expect it will go to her estate, perhaps a museum. It's caused enough trouble. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. A jewel of beauty, yet a catalyst for tragedy. Such is the nature of desire. As Hargrove left to prepare for the authorities, Hastings turned to Poirot. What now? Poirot, back to London or another adventure? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. For now, mon ami. We return to the quiet life, though I suspect it will not remain quiet for long. The world is full of mysteries, and Hercule Poirot is never far from them. They stepped onto the deck, where the first rays of dawn illuminated the sea. The Sapphire Queen, its secrets laid bare, seemed to breathe easier, its tragedy resolved by Poirot's relentless logic. As the authorities' launch drew near, Poirot gazed at the horizon, his little grey cells already anticipating the next challenge, while Hastings, ever loyal, stood ready to follow. Chapter 13. The shadows of justice at dawn of August 19th, 1925, broke over the Sapphire Queen with a serene beauty that belied the grim events of the past 2 days. The Mediterranean sparkled under the rising sun, its tranquil waves lapping against the yacht's hull as if to wash away the stain of Lady Beatrice Ashford's murder. Hercule Poirot stood on the upper deck, his small frame silhouetted against the horizon. his green eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. Captain Arthur Hastings, joining him with a steaming cup of coffee, felt the weight of the case's resolution, though the echoes of Victor Langston's guilt lingered like a faint mist. The Capri authorities had arrived at first light. Their launch now docked alongside the yacht, and the formalities of justice were underway. Victor Langston, pale and silent, had been taken into custody. His journal and the incriminating photograph secured as evidence. The jeweled dagger, the star of Capri, the scuff mark, the stained glove, and the cryptic notebook entries had all played their parts in Poirot's masterful unraveling of the crime. Yet, as Hastings had come to expect, Poirot's mind was not content to rest. He sought to tie up the loose threads, to ensure that every facet of the case was polished to clarity. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant, the act of justice is not the end, but a beginning. We must ensure that the truth shines brightly, without shadow. The saloon, where Poirot had delivered his dramatic reveal the previous evening, was now a hub of activity. The authorities, led by a stern Italian inspector named Rossi, were cataloguing evidence and taking statements. The guests, though no longer suspects, remained subdued, their faces marked by the strain of the ordeal. Clara Duval, her scarlet gown replaced by a sombre black dress, sat alone, her eyes red-rimmed. Leonard Grayson and his wife Evelyn huddled together, their earlier tension replaced by a fragile unity. Dr. Felix Mortimer fidgeted with his cigar case, his tic less pronounced but still evident. Penelope Travers, her spectacles polished to a gleam, scribbled notes perhaps out of habit. The star of Capri, now locked in Captain Hargrave's safe, awaited its fate under Lady Ashford's will. Poirot, invited by Inspector Rossi to provide a formal account, recounted the case with his characteristic precision. The murder of Lady Ashford, he began, standing before the assembled group, was a crime of calculation born of a past betrayal. Monsieur Langston, her solicitor, was driven by fear of exposure. In 1919, he and Mademoiselle Duval shared a liaison in Paris, a secret Lady Ashford discovered and used to control him. When she threatened to reveal it, he planned her death using a dagger from this saloon, planting clues to mislead the cigar smoke to implicate Dr. Mortimer, the scuff mark and letter to frame Mademoiselle Duval, the stained glove to cast suspicion on Madame Grayson. Inspector Rossi, a man of few words, nodded gravely. Your evidence is compelling, Signor Poirot. The journal, the photograph, the key, these will ensure Langston's conviction. But why the sapphire? Why leave it behind? Poirot's mustache twitched. The star of Capri was not the motive, Inspector. It was a distraction, a symbol of Lady Ashford's power. Langston, killed to protect his reputation, not to steal. The open safe, the porthole scratch, these were his attempts to confuse the trail. But the little grey cells, they see through such deceptions. As Rossi continued his interviews, Poirot took Hastings aside, leading him to the deck for a private word. There is one matter yet to resolve, mon ami, he said, producing the small key from the safe. This key unlocked the panel hiding the photograph, but I suspect it has another purpose. Lady Ashford was meticulous, her secrets were layered. We must search her cabin once more. With Hargrave's permission, they returned to the owner's cabin, now cleared of the body but still heavy with the memory of violence. Poirot examined the desk, its locked drawer already opened, and turned his attention to a small wooden box on a shelf, its intricate carving suggesting a hidden compartment. The key fit perfectly, revealing a slim ledger inside. Its pages detailed payments to Langston, marked consulting fees, but the amounts were exorbitant, thousands of pounds over years. A final entry, dated the day before the murder, read, VL refuses further payment, exposure imminent. Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. This confirms it. Lady Ashford was extorting Langston, not merely threatening him. These payments were for his silence about her own indiscretions, perhaps tied to that Paris photograph. When he refused to pay more, she planned to ruin him. It was the final spark for his crime. Hastings shook his head, marveling. She was playing a dangerous game, Poirot. Blackmailing her own solicitor, it's no wonder he snapped. Poirot agreed, but snapping is not his nature. Langston planned with cold precision, using every detail to mislead, yet he could not foresee Hercule Poirot. His voice carried a hint of pride, tempered by a sombre note. Lady Ashford's greed for control cost her life, and Langston's fear cost him his freedom. A tragedy, mon ami, of human weakness. As they left the cabin, Clara Duval approached, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "I owe you thanks. You cleared my name, though I feared the truth about Paris would destroy me. I was young, foolish. Beatrice never forgave me." Poirot's gaze was kind but firm. "Mademoiselle, the past shapes us, but it need not define us. You are free of her shadow now. Live wisely." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. Hastings watched her go, then turned to Poirot. "You've given them closure, Poirot, but what of us? Back to London." Poirot smiled faintly, his eyes on the approaching shore. "For now, moan. Army, we return to the world. But the world, it has a way of calling Hercule Poirot back to its mysteries." The Sapphire Queen prepared to sail for Capri, its passengers ready to leave the nightmare behind. Poirot's work was done, his little. Grey cells triumphant, but the echoes of justice would linger, a reminder of the delicate balance between truth and human frailty. Chapter 14. The final threads. The Sapphire Queen sailed smoothly toward the port of Capri, its gleaming hull cutting through the Mediterranean's azure waves. Under the bright morning sun of August 19th, 1925, the yacht, once a stage for murder and deception, now carried an air of weary resolution. Hercule Poirot, his suit as impeccable as ever, stood on the upper deck, his green eyes scanning the approaching coastline. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt the case's weight, lifting, though the intricacies of Victor Langston's crimes still lingered in his mind. The Capri authorities had taken Langston into custody, along with the damning evidence, the jeweled dagger, the photograph, the journal, and the ledger ensuring justice would follow. Yet Poirot, ever meticulous, sought to tie up the final threads of the mystery before leaving the Sapphire Queen. The saloon, where Poirot had unravelled the crime the previous evening, was now quiet. Its chandeliers dimmed as the guests prepared to disembark. Clara Duval, Leonard and Evelyn Grayson, Dr. Felix Mortimer, and Penelope Travers had retreated to their cabins, packing their belongings with a mixture of relief and lingering unease. The Star of Capri, secured in Captain Hargrave's safe, awaited its fate under Lady Ashford's will, its brilliance a stark reminder of the greed and betrayal that had fueled the tragedy. Hastings, sipping a cup of tea, broke the silence. "Poirot, you've done it again, solved the unsolvable. But are you certain there's nothing left? No loose ends?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Moan. Army, Hercule Poirot leaves no loose ends. But there are always nuances to explore. The human heart is complex, and even in victory, there are lessons to be learned." He opened his small black notebook, its pages a testament to his methodical genius, and reviewed his final notes, the scuff mark near Clara Duval's cabin, the cigar smoke, the stained glove, the 1919 photograph, and the ledger revealing Lady Ashford's extortion of Langston. Poirot's final task was to confirm the ledger's implications with Captain Hargrave, who had known Lady Ashford for years. They met in the captain's quarters, a modest space cluttered with nautical charts and logbooks. Hargrave, his face lined with fatigue, greeted them somberly. "Monsieur Poirot, your work has saved this ship from ruin, but I still can't believe Langston, a solicitor, so reserved, could do such a thing." Poirot nodded, producing the ledger from Lady Ashford's cabin. "Capitaine, this ledger details payments from Monsieur Langston to Lady Ashford, marked as consulting fees, but clearly extortion. Can you confirm her practice of collecting such payments?" Hargrave sighed, rubbing his temples. "Beatrice was ruthless in business and personal matters. I knew she had a hold over people's debts. Secrets, she'd hinted it, gloating over her influence. Langston was her solicitor for years. She trusted him with her affairs. but I suspected she had something on him. That ledger doesn't surprise me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the photograph Paris, 1919, with Mademoiselle Duval and Langston. Did Lady Ashford ever speak of a betrayal from that time?" Hargrove hesitated, then nodded. "Once, after too much wine, she mentioned a scandal in Paris. A friend who betrayed her with a man she loved. She didn't name them, but she said she'd never forgive. That must be the photograph you found." This final piece confirmed Poirot's reconstruction. "Merci, Capitaine. Lady Ashford's vendetta against Langston and Mademoiselle Duval was the spark. She extorted him for years, threatening to expose his affair with Clara. When he refused further payment, she planned to ruin him, and he struck first. As they left Hargrove's quarters, Hastings ventured a question. "Poirot, what about the others? Clara, the Graysons, Mortimer, Travers? They all had motives. Could any of them have been complicit?" Poirot shook his head. "None, Hastings. Their motives were real, but their guilt was not. Clara's debt made her a target for Langston's frame. The Graysons' disputes with Lady Ashford were financial, not fatal. Dr. Mortimer's secrets were professional, not murderous, and Mademoiselle Travers, though complicit in recording Lady Ashford's schemes, lacked the nerve for murder. Langston acted alone, his plan meticulous, but flawed by his own fear." They returned to the deck, where the port of Capri was now in clear view, its whitewashed buildings gleaming against the cliffs. The guests began to gather, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension as they prepared to face the authorities' final questions. Clara Duval approached Poirot, her expression softer than before. "Monsieur Poirot, I want to thank you again. You saved me from ruin, but I feel such guilt. If I hadn't been so reckless in Paris—" Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, the past is a lesson, not a chain. You were a victim of Lady Ashford's cruelty, as was Langston, though he chose a darker path. Go forward with wisdom." As Clara walked away, Evelyn Grayson approached, her husband at her side. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady despite her pallor, "that glove, you knew it wasn't blood. Why did you press me so?" Poirot smiled faintly. "To observe. Madam, your fear revealed your innocence, but also Langston's. Cunning. He planted the glove to mislead, knowing your vulnerability. You are free now, you and Monsieur Grayson." Leonard Grayson grunted, his earlier bluster subdued. "You're a strange man, Poirot, but you've got a sharp mind. We owe you." Poirot inclined his head, his work complete. As the yacht docked, the authorities boarded, their questions brief in light of Poirot's comprehensive evidence. Langston, handcuffed and silent, was led away, his journal and the photograph sealing his fate. The Star of Capri would be handled by Lady Ashford's estate. Its curse, if such a thing existed, ended with a death. Hastings, watching the bustle of the port, turned to Poirot. "Another case closed, Poirot, but I can't help feeling there's always another mystery waiting." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Indeed, mon ami, the world is never short of secrets, and Hercule Poirot is never far from them. For now, let us enjoy the beauty of Capri, though I suspect our holiday will be brief." The Sapphire Queen stood ready to sail again, its tragedy resolved, its passengers freed from the shadow of murder. Poirot's little grey cells, ever vigilant, had restored order, leaving only the final echoes of justice to fade into the Mediterranean breeze. Chapter 15. The departure of the Sapphire Queen rested at the dock of Capri's bustling port, its sleek lines a striking contrast to the quaint, sun-beached buildings that clung to the island's cliffs. It was noon on August 19th, 1925, and the Mediterranean sparkled under a cloudless sky, its beauty a quiet balm after the storm of Lady Beatrice Ashford's murder. Hercule Poirot, his suit immaculate despite the heat, stood on the deck, his green eyes surveying the scene with a serene satisfaction. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt a sense of closure, though the weight of the case, its web of secrets, motives, and betrayals lingered in his mind. Victor Langston was in the hands of the Capri authorities, the Star of Capri secured for Lady Ashford's estate. and the yacht's passengers were preparing to return to their lives forever. Changed by Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth, the morning had been a flurry of formalities. Inspector Rossi and his team had completed their interviews, their efficient questions bolstered by Poirot's meticulous evidence, the jeweled dagger, the 1919 photograph, Langston's journal, the ledger detailing his extortion, and the subtle clues, the scuff mark, the cigar smoke, the stained glove that had pointed to his guilt. The guests, now cleared of suspicion, had gathered their belongings, their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. Clara Duval, her usual vibrancy subdued, was arranging passage back to Paris. Leonard and Evelyn Grayson, their marriage strained, but intact, prepared to return to America. Dr. Felix Mortimer, his tic less pronounced, was eager to resume his practice, while Penelope Travers, ever the dutiful secretary, had taken on the task of organizing Lady Ashford's papers for her estate. Poirot, his small black notebook tucked into his pocket, stood at the railing, his gaze drifting to the horizon. "Hastings," he said, his voice soft but resonant, "each case is a chapter in the book of humanity. This one, with its secrets and sorrows, reminds us that truth, though painful, is the only path to peace." Hastings, adjusting his hat against the sun, nodded. "You've done it again." Poirot cut through the lies like a knife. "But I keep thinking about Lady Ashford. She brought this on herself, didn't she? All that blackmail, those secrets she held over people." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile forming. "Oui, mon ami. Lady Ashford was a collector of power, wielding secrets as a sculptor wields a chisel. But power, when used to crush, invites rebellion. Langston's crime was heinous, yet it was born of her own cruelty. She threatened to expose his past with Mademoiselle Duval, a scandal that would have ruined him. The ledger, the photograph, these were her weapons, turned against her by his desperation." Hastings frowned, still piecing together the final details. "That photograph, Paris, 1919. You said it showed a betrayal. Was it really just an affair between Langston and Clara?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a puzzle fully solved. "Not merely an affair, Hastings, but a betrayal of trust. Lady Ashford, in her youth, loved Langston, or believed she did. In Paris, he turned to Clara Duval, a rising star, and their liaison broke Lady Ashford's heart. She never forgave, and when she gained wealth and influence, she used that photograph to extort Langston, forcing him to serve as her solicitor and pay her fees to keep his secret. When he refused further payment, she planned to destroy him. He struck first, with the dagger from her own saloon, a poetic irony." Hastings shook his head, marveling. "And the other clues, the glove, the cigar smoke, the scuff mark, they were all part of his plan to mislead, precisement." Poirot said, "Langston was meticulous. He planted the glove to implicate Madame Grayson, whose fear of Lady Ashford's influence made her a plausible suspect. The cigar smoke, stolen from Dr. Mortimer's box, pointed to him. The scuff mark near Mademoiselle Duval's door, paired with the letter, framed her. The porthole scratch suggested an outsider. But the little grey cells. Hastings, they see the pattern beneath the deception, the key unlocking the panel. With the photograph was his fatal mistake, for it led me to the truth." As they spoke, Penelope Travers approached, her spectacles glinting in the sunlight. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I've finished cataloguing Lady Ashford's papers. They're ready for her solicitors in London. I want to thank you. You saw through the lies, even mine." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, your candour, though delayed, helped illuminate the truth. You recorded Lady Ashford's schemes, but you did not wield the dagger. Go forward with a clear conscience." Penelope nodded, a tear escaping as she turned away. Hastings watched her go, then turned to Poirot. "She'll carry this with her, won't she?" "They all will." "Oui," Poirot said, his tone sombre. "Each bears a scar, Clara, her guilt. The Graysons, their strained trust, Mortimer, his tarnished reputation, Travers, her complicity. But scars heal. Hastings, and truth, though painful, allows that healing to begin." Captain Hargrove joined them, his face weary but grateful. "Monsieur Poirot, The yacht is ready to sail for Naples, where the guests will disembark. The Star of Capri will go to Lady Ashford's estate, as per her will. I don't know how we'd have managed without you." Poirot smiled faintly. "It is my calling, Capitaine, to bring order to chaos. The Sapphire Queen is free of its shadow now." As the yacht prepared to depart, Poirot and Hastings gathered their own belongings, ready to return to London. The port buzzed with activity, fishermen and vendors calling out. But for Poirot, the world was a quiet stage, the case of performance concluded. "What now, Poirot?" Hastings asked, a grin tugging at his lips. A real holiday, or straight into another mystery? Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A holiday, perhaps, mon ami, but the world. It has a way of summoning Hercule Poirot. For now, let us savour the sea air and the triumph of truth." The Sapphire Queen set sail, its engines humming as it left Capri behind. Poirot stood at the stern, his gaze fixed on the fading island, his little grey cells at rest, but ever ready for the next challenge. The tragedy of Lady Ashford was over, its secrets laid bare, and the yacht sailed into the future, carrying the memory of Poirot's genius and the enduring power of justice.